I've wanted to have you guys for so long. I feel like I obviously told you I was a Hills fan, and then I saw Ashley rolling her face with another product, and I was like, no, we have to get her a Skinny Confidential ice roller. And people were messaging me pictures of Ashley rolling her face.
Oh yeah, she still does it to this day.
I love it. My daughter loves it, actually.
We got to get your daughter one.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's like so good for your face. I have such a bad rash right now. It looks like I was stung by a bee. I have so much makeup on right now, and the ice roller like saved my life.
God, you look great.
Oh, thanks. It's
no, you know what? I get really bad migraines, and that is the only thing, because I get really bad neck pain in the back, and so I'll take the ice roller and use it on the back of my neck, actually, and it's so helpful because it makes the inflammation go down, and then I don't have a migraine anymore.
Thanks for the plug. Code Skinny.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in.
All right.
So I'm so excited to have both of you guys on. I have been such a fan of the Hills, Laguna Beach, all the different things. I also was a fan of Celebrity Rehab, which we're going to get into. I wanted to have you guys on to like talk about your experience with the Hills and how you guys met, but I also wanted to just talk about everything you guys have been through. I think to kick it off, I would love to know how you guys met.
I'll let you take that one, Ashley.
Well, do you remember Las Palmas in Hollywood? We met at a club.
Kind of. Michael and I were in San Diego.
Yeah.
What
Did
year,
you ever come down here?
What year was that?
God, I think it was
2009.
like 2009.
It was still out.
Las Palmas.
And
in
is
Hollywood.
Jason like out partying, boozing, having fun when you guys meet? Okay.
Yes.
And
the only clubs I knew was like that place Sound. Remember that place? It was called, was it Sound?
I feel like you're not the
Boyer.
person to talk about clubs.
I don't know about that one.
Boyer was one.
Boyer.
Yeah.
Lauren worked at Ledoux for a while.
You did?
I
Rock
did.
Mondays.
For like 1 second. That
Yeah,
was
so
1
I
second.
worked at Geisha House.
Oh,
so
yeah.
like Lonnie and Sil. Yeah. I used
Yes.
to
Wait,
work
the
for them.
owner was Lonnie.
Yeah, Lonnie and Sil. Yeah.
Okay, Lonnie and Sil.
Yes.
Oh, never would have remembered
Dolce
that.
Group.
Shout out to Dolce Group.
Yeah.
Okay, so
There we
tell us
go.
how you met.
Okay, so my girlfriend, we walked into Las Palmas, and she and I were looking around, and you know, back then you're wearing like your cute little tiny dress. Now girls are like in crop tops and jeans. It's weird. But you got all dressed up, you went to the club, and my girlfriend was like, oh my God, there's that guy Jason from the Hills. We should go over and drink his alcohol. I'm like, okay, whatever. Which is like what you did back then. So walked to the table.
I didn't know where you're going with this one. Okay.
Hung out with him, and yeah, it was kind of a wild night. We hung out, and I just remember both of us were like really wild.
Was it a connection though right away?
I need to know, what does wild mean?
Yeah, what does
here?
this mean?
Well,
My
he
mind could go to like a lot of
kissed
different places.
me, and then he kissed my friend. So it was one of those like
you dog,
crazy nights.
Jason, you dog.
You know
I
what
was-
though?
you
That
know,
works.
It does. It worked out very well.
So we didn't talk for a year after that. But he ended up coming into Geisha House all the time, and he'd have a water bottle. And my girlfriend had
It wasn't full of vodka anymore.
No, my girlfriend had called me a couple days later, and she was like, hey, you'll never believe who's going to be on Celebrity Rehab. I'm like, who? She goes, Jason Wahler. I said, yeah, right. That guy is trouble. Like, there's no way he's getting sober. But then he continued to come into Geisha House with water, and then he ended up living in Newport with my girlfriend's boyfriend. And so that's kind of how we reconnected, and we went on a date almost a year when he was sober, and literally we went on a date and we were together ever since. It was like,
I want to ask
Yeah.
you something.
Home.
This is just
Hit me.
because I'm trying to think about like those kind of like 2009, 10 club days. I imagine that wasn't the easiest to go to those places with just a water bottle. It's like you're still kind of.
No, you were still in the mix of it, but I mean, at that time, after when I started coming back in, I'd acquired some time of sobriety, and so I was already moved back to Orange County, got out of this environment, but I still had a lot of friends up here, so I was coming back and forth, and this was 8-9 months down the road, and when I was back down there, actually after Celebrity Rehab, I lived with Jason Davis. Unfortunately, he's no longer here.
so sad.
And a kid by the name of Andrew, who was friends with her friend, and that's kind of how we all reconnected again. But yeah, no, it was, I wouldn't recommend that in the early stages of it, but I mean, I was at such a different place. And then right after I got out of Celebrity Rehab for the first time, I actually got like a real job. By the time I grew up playing baseball. That's all I kind of had to do, go to school, get decent grades. And then the show happened, and then just went off the deep end, you know what I mean? And just, thought I was living the dream, being paid to party and travel the world at 18, 19, 20, 21. So long story short, though, when I connected with Ashley, I'd actually had a real job. I actually was.
You're 24. I remember his first real job, 24 years old.
Yeah, I started working in the treatment industry, and I was a recovery advocate. And I worked with Mike Netherton, who was the president of Betty Ford for 25 years. Betty Ford's
Sure.
right-hand man. So I had a great mentor. Dr. Drew is still a very dear friend, but he was a mentor for me back then as well. And I really surrendered. And so that's really when things transitioned, was July 23rd, 2010.
Do you think being on the Hills contributed to the spiral of addiction, or do you just think it helped propel it?
So this is it's a great question. I do not blame the shows for my addiction, right? I mean, I was pre-genetically disposed. I got half my family struggles with addiction and or mental health. It just sped everything up. Definitely, it added fuel to the fire because it created access. For an alcoholic, I have an overinflated ego with an underestimated sense of self-worth. And when I'm in the depths of that and you're adding all this falsified reality out here that I can escape with, it just kept adding fuel to the fire, and at 18, most of your friends are looking for fake IDs and we're being paid to go around the country wherever. I mean, different
girls are coming up to you in short dresses out of nowhere.
Striped shirts. You remember that? Yeah.
They got friends.
Was I in a striped shirt?
No, your friend. I'm just kidding.
I'm like, I think I was in a green
She's
dress.
like that. I wasn't a stripe, Jason.
Sorry, polka dots.
Walk us through someone who doesn't have access to the kinds of things that you had access to at that time, what it looks like. Like, is it like you just walk up to the line and they let you in? Is it girls trying to like literally sit on your dick? Like what are we looking at that's like contributing to this world?
I guess we can kind of freely speak, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, we can freely speak.
Earmuffs.
Babe, no, I don't need earmuffs. I know everything. I don't even care.
No, it's
Michael doesn't have a pretty past either.
So coming from Laguna Beach, which is kind of like a sleepy, little surf art community, to I'll never forget Talon brought us up to LA because Talon was kind of up in the mix at 17. He left high school and we came up here, and Frankie Delgado, who I've known now for that long, since I was 18 years old, we went up and we tried just think of the process getting alcohol, going to 7-Eleven. Hey bro, can you get us some? Or if you don't have, if you don't have a fake ID or anything like that. So we walk up and we go to the back. I think it was called Element at the time back in the day. And we're like, dude, how the hell? Like, we weren't even on television yet, and he's like, oh, trust me, I got you, bro. We go he walks us through the back door and we're in. And I remember Cedric was with me, Talon, and we just kind of looked at each other. Like literally, it was probably, I forget what movie it was, but I'm thinking of, I forget what the movie it is, but it was like, we both looked at it, we're like, dude, we're fucking doing this. Like we're in here at 17. And that's when my addiction definitely started to kick off and just having this access. So we're up here every weekend.
Well, because like everybody else in high school is probably there, they're down doing the sleepy town, doing the house party thing, and you're like up here.
Coming up here. And so I was just thinking about how, because Talon was on the first season of Laguna. That's why he had this access. I came back from boarding school. So then that's when I came back, and then we ended up having, the second season came out. But that's kind of how it initially happened, because Talon was on Laguna, and he started dating Lindsay Lohan and stuff. So that's,
he was dating like big names.
Yeah, so that's how we kind of got into the mix. But it was crazy. For just the access, being able to get in, everything was free. Now you're getting paid to come to these places. Unlimited girls. It was gnarly.
I've always wanted to ask this question. I don't know how I've never asked this question on this podcast. When you're on such a popular show and you're single and you're young and you're out having fun, especially in LA, and I think you're going to say yes, can you spot the girl that has desperate energy because she knows you're on the show? There's kind of like, what do they do? Tell me what they do. Like, how do they act?
God, they're just overly flirtatious, and it's there's like almost a desperate side to it, you know what I mean? Or they're just kind of like, hey, can we get a drink? Like, they're just overly flirty. It's just very apparent. It's almost, there's not something like very, very particular that they do. I'd be like, oh, that's how you call it out. But they were just, I don't know.
They get like clingery.
Yeah, they're very clingy.
Well, here's
I
the
call
thing.
It ear horn.
Like speaking of someone who,
I love it.
As a guy who, like, say you like another experience didn't have that access, like random girls aren't just popping up out of nowhere, no matter what kind of, like, even if you're a good looking dude, like they're not coming out of nowhere and just being like, hey, like they want a little bit of a pursuit. So when it must be weird when it's the other way around, because it just doesn't happen normally to men.
I think that's probably why Jason liked Ashley, though, is because it sounds like you were like kind of underwhelmed the first night and you were like, work for it.
That's true. I feel like I was. What do you think? I don't know.
The first night, I don't remember the first night.
I don't really remember the first night either. But we went on our first date.
And I remember we met there, but I don't really remember what happened.
Yeah,
same. My alcoholism at those stages, it was blackout, so I don't remember Like when I drank, I would black out.
Do you remember the first moment that you decided this is time for me to get sober without someone else pushing you? Or were there things that led up to it? Was there an epiphany? Was there a rock bottom? I know everyone's story is different when it comes to this.
Yeah. I mean, again, keep in mind after, going to 12 treatment centers, being arrested a ton of times, and having everything that society says is amazing, whether it's money, access, notoriety, girls, whatever it is. I was still that individual that was just so lonely, so depressed, so ashamed. That not only did I contemplate attempting suicide, I've actually tried committing suicide. And by the grace of God, I was found and I'm still here. But the turning point for that was actually, again, as I have a very tight family dynamic. My parents have been married, coming up on 50 years of marriage.
Wow.
This year, 50 years.
And was going back into a therapy session with my parents for the 100th of time. You know what I mean? And this was right before July 23rd. It was like a few days prior to that. And my dad, never seen him break down. He's kind of like the patriarch of our family. And only time I've seen him break down was when his mom died. And he basically just looked at me with my mom there and tear coming down his eye and just saying, hey, look, Jason, like, we don't know what to do anymore. Mom and I, our marriage is suffering. And we're like two planks of wood laying in bed, just waiting for the phone call. You're dead. And whatever that was. And again, there's conversations, there's multiple interventions that have happened, but there was a moment of clarity there. There was a real light that came on that I saw through my dad. And I didn't have enough motivation for myself at that time to get sober, but my family, and because I had such a tight dynamic, I said, look, I don't care enough about me right now, but you guys will become my motivation and my inspiration. And that was the time. That's when I really transformed my life. Was
alcohol your drug of choice?
Yeah, I would say alcohol is my drug of choice, but anything that would make me feel different, I was addicted to. I loved cocaine. I loved any form of uppers. I tried all types of pills and stuff, but I never got into the like heroin or any needles or any of that type of stuff. But
side note on cocaine for anyone who's listening, and you could probably speak more eloquently on this, but I heard that like recently it's completely different than it used to be when you were doing it. It's like laced with fentanyl and stuff. And people, is this maybe you could just do a little like sentence on this?
Times right now.
For anyone who's listening who's doing cocaine, you could, if you know anything about it. That would be cool.
I just think in general, drugs are way different than they were just overall. I'm talking about marijuana. You're talking about any forms of prescription drugs. Pills nowadays that look just like a Xanax, that look just like an Oxy, that look just like a Valium. They're actually pressed and then they're actually fentanyl based. So
yeah, you have to be really careful.
Coke is cut
now
with fentanyl.
Yeah,
we had 100. So you have to understand, addiction is the leading cause of death in America for 50-year-old individuals and younger. So just kind of keep that in mind. We had 100,000 people just this last year die from overdoses. That's not with, dealing with heart attacks, cirrhosis of the liver, all
just purely overdosing.
That's just purely over 100,000 people. And it's the only disease in American history that's been on a steady incline with the amount of people dying, with a steady decline with the amount of success.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's one of these charts going like this, as opposed to it should be going up together.
And the pandemic, I've seen so many people that like I would never like. They're like, I'm drinking more, I'm taking more pills.
So sad.
Even when you watch some of the reality TV show, you can tell like something's off.
Yeah,
it's
so sad.
Yeah,
you guys know what the number one form of happiness is, right?
What?
Longest living study at Harvard. You know what it is?
What?
Human connection.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
It is.
Whoa, that just gave me chills.
And you wonder why. Again, as I think
so
that the tip of the spear is, this is my belief, right? I'm not a doctor. Just working in the space, I've been around it for so long. I think we have not even come close to seeing what the repercussions are from the mental health standpoint from 2020.
Oh, sure.
That's such an interesting topic that you bring that up, and kind of on a tangent. I was talking to Michael the other day. I'm like, I feel like the world was in fear for 2 years and now everyone's burnt out. And I think that people don't acknowledge the micro traumas that everyone has been through. And I think they have like, there's going to be almost like a PTSD from this that we haven't even hit yet.
Yeah.
100%.
100%.
But that's why it's important to have conversations like this, because I think more knowledge is power.
Yep.
So when you decided to get sober and you're on a date with Ashley, was this was this it? Were you sober from then on out? And how did you sort of support that?
And were you guys dating at all ever in between, like when you were using
give us like kind of your journey
sober?
together of how that was working.
So we didn't talk for a year after we met at the club. And then when he
One and done, bro.
When he started coming into the restaurant in Geisha House with the water, that's when we decided to go on a date. I actually was going to FITM and I was finishing my degree, and I don't know how we reconnected. I think through social media, like Facebook or something. And we ended up trying to get together, and our schedules weren't working out. And then finally we went out on our first date. We went to Ovo Trisante in Brentwood. I used to love that restaurant. I remember it so well. And it's actually a funny story because of the stage 5 Klinger ear horn situation. When Jason came to pick me up, he did not have a date planned. He just said, hey, do you care if we go and hang out with a few of my friends? So Jason did not take girls on dates anymore because there were so many psycho fans that he had to take girls on group dates in case he had to leave the girl with his friends. Yes, seriously.
What a move.
Yeah.
It was that bad?
Yeah.
It was really weird. Like, I mean, the shit that I like that was
because I imagine people are. It's hard to decipher who's dating you for you and who's dating you for what they think you are.
100%.
Yeah.
Wait, what do you mean? Like they would like, what are they doing? Michael had a girl that chewed glass.
What?
That was weird.
Well,
That's pretty legit.
That's really weird.
That was weird.
listen, that was
weird.
It was kind of a turn on too at the same time.
He was
I feel you on
chewing
that.
Yeah.
glass, but yeah. So they were
Bit
just
right through the wine
They would
glass.
just be so weird that you couldn't even.
It would just be it'd be like overkill with what they do to the point of like it being super uncomfortable and awkward. And like I literally wanted people there. Like I didn't know if they were going to try to sue me or like what, you know what I mean? It was just like, it was like for anything. And I also have to understand I was in a super sick state of mind. Like this, like for that last year, 2 years, it was almost protection for myself too, just because I was such a bad alcoholic.
But you were sober then.
I know. I'm saying in general, when I started doing that towards the end, it was just more of like to make sure that it was
Have the
cool,
support.
Yeah.
The support.
100%.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
So you go on a date with his friends?
Well, there was like a nutritionist and then like another friend.
I don't look like I was in shape,
And then another friend. I think there were 2 more friends. I think Brendan came with us and then your nutritionist and then maybe one more person. And then we ended up like leaving
such a good
them.
memory.
I remember exactly what I was wearing too. I was wearing like these like probably cheap lace-up boots from Melrose and like this gray shirt that had like a skull on it or something. I don't know. It was
I can spot the time.
and like remember the really tight skirts that you used to wear, the bandage skirts?
Oh, yeah,
I think
the
I was
bandage
wearing one of
skirts.
those with like the lace-up heel boots.
You
Oh
guys
my
should
God,
be
so
yourself for
bad.
Halloween one year when you met.
that'd be so funny. I
So
love that.
so did you fall in love with him the first date, or was it not like that at all?
First date, I think it wasn't necessarily that I fell in love with him, but I felt like this really weird sense of home. My parents have been married for 32 years. I grew up in an Italian family, very strong, like Catholic morals, and his family was a very big family too. His parents had been married for a really long time. So we automatically kind of hit it off with having that like very strong family dynamic. And we left his friends and we literally laughed the whole entire car ride. And I just felt like this weird sense of peace. I don't know. It was like a feeling of home.
So at this point, had you already been on celebrity rehab?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, you were done with it.
Yeah. I didn't date you when I was on Celebrity Rehab.
Let me
No,
ask you
no,
a
no, no.
personal question.
Mm-hmm.
And Jason, please don't take offense. But
No.
when you see someone that's struggling and they've been on celebrity rehab and they've been on television, but you still have the foresight to be like, hey, this is my person. Like, what are you seeing and what are you able to ignore? Because I think a lot, you know what I mean? Like a lot of people would look at this and be like, oh, this is a fix-it project maybe, right? And I don't mean that offensively.
Yeah.
None taken.
So honestly, I had no idea about addiction. I grew up at like my parents gave me alcohol when I was 8, with like a little glass of wine with dinner because that's just what was very normal in my family because we grew up very Italian.
So maybe you weren't like, you didn't realize like what real addiction was.
I really had no idea what addiction was. And this is such like 2009. Like people weren't even talking about struggling with addiction or anything like that. So when he had told me though that he, the first thing he said to me actually in the car was, listen, my sobriety is number 1. Nothing comes before that. Not you, not anybody. Number 1 and God. And without that, I literally have nothing. And so that moment on, I didn't drink around him for like a year. Like
Wow.
literally stopped
Yeah, she
drinking
didn't.
as a support to him because I felt
Aw.
like I'm not, drinking for me is not like really a big deal. Whatever I could do to be a support to him, I loved him. So whatever I could do, because we used to go out, we would go to Hyde, we would have fun, and I wouldn't drink around him because I didn't want him tasting alcohol on my breath. I just felt like it was kind of rude. So yeah, I didn't drink for like almost a year.
That's
Yeah, it was
pretty
incredible.
amazing.
Yeah.
I want to go back because I feel like we skipped celebrity rehab.
Okay.
What
Yeah.
was that experience like? Is that what we see is what we get? Like,
It's pretty is what you see is what you get. And I mean, I went on there to change the public's negative perception
Good
of the
for
way they
you.
perceive me, just as
you
a
did,
whole.
you did a really good job.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I went in sober. So I had I think 12 20 days or 20, like maybe 30 days sober. I forget the exact amount of time. I was actually in a treatment center, came back, and then I transitioned into there. So like I said, I kind of had my own motives of going in there, and I also respected Drew, and I like Bob, and I thought that
I think Bob Forrest, I love Drew. He's been on here. Hi, Drew. But I think Bob Forrest is an angel sent from somewhere else. I mean, that guy, even with us for some things, like he just wants to help people.
He does.
Yeah, he does. He's a great guy.
Yeah. And he again, so having those two guys, I mean, which I love and respect dearly. And again, they've been so instrumental in my recovery journey all the way to today. But getting their insight, getting their perspective on everything, and it was like a TV show for me. I mean, I was in there, I was already detoxed, I was already kind of going through the motions, and you have to remember, I'm in there with, Leif Garrett, Janice Dickinson, Jason Davis. I mean, there was some people that were really coming off some heavy detox. So it was almost like, for me, it was like being on a TV show, but watching a TV show.
Hold on, I have to do a side note. I'm sorry.
I was like a background prop.
I am obsessed with Janice Dickinson, and I'll tell you why.
She's a riot.
I'm attracted to people that you never know what's going to come out of their mouth, aka my producer Taylor. Like, she's like on another planet in the best way. I've read all her books. She's lived a crazy life. Is she how she is?
Yep.
I mean, times 1,000.
We hang out with Janice.
We love her.
I've been friends with her for
You should
years.
have her on here. I bet she'd come on here. She's the best.
I would die.
Yeah, she's
awesome. I think I would.
Weren't
stop
you talking to her? Weren't you trying to work that out?
I was talking to her on Instagram, but like, I don't know. I feel maybe you guys can say that like Lauren's obsessed with her. I love her.
No,
anyway,
love that.
The coolest story about her, she's doing phenomenal. She actually married a psychiatrist from UCLA.
Yeah,
wow. That's cool.
Yeah, so she's really that's why you can't really haven't heard from her. Like, she's like doing really, really well.
Good for her.
So, but I'll connect you too.
Yeah, she's the best.
She is exactly what you see is what you get. Like, to your point, that's how she is. I mean, I'll never forget when we had her up in Arrowhead and we went, on the boat to the village, and it was like, oh shit, dude, like we're going out in public, like, I love her. Like, but just all these, all these families and stuff. And it's just, she gets off and she's just, like it's who she is.
She goes through the grocery store and she starts opening all the lotion bottles and putting them on her body like she owns the fucking store. I'm like, Janice, what are you doing? We haven't purchased these yet. She's like, I don't care. Like, just putting them on her body. She's like, my skin's so dry. I'm dying.
Oh my God. Yeah. She is like, she's a cartoon character.
She's legit.
She's amazing.
Okay, so go ahead. So you're in the house. Did you name everyone you're in the house with? You said Leif Garrett, Jason Davis.
Yeah, Jeremy London.
Jeremy Jackson in there too?
No, not Jeremy Jackson. Rachel, you could tell Tiger Woods like main mistress. Jason, Frankie, Keisha Cole's mom. And then...
And no one can hook up and no one can do any substance.
Correct. And I don't think anybody hooked up. No. Oh, and Eric Roberts was in there with us. Julia Roberts' brother.
Eric
Roberts.
Emma Roberts' husband.
Did you like the experience and did it actually help?
I thought so as a person in there, yes, I gained education and stuff like that. And from a viewer, because I actually watched other seasons and stuff like that, I think for somebody to get an understanding and to get more education, I think Dr. Drew is a very well-educated doctor, and he does a very good job at explaining stuff. So I think there is an educational component for the audience. But as a person in there, yes, I took stuff away for sure.
That's cool.
Let me ask you this: this is kind of a strange TV deal, right? Because you're going through the throes of addiction. And then they're like, hey, but come on here and do it on television. So there's like the television deal, agent, manager component, but then you're also going in to get sober. Is that strange to navigate?
It was awkward. I mean, because the producers, again, not Drew, I want to be very clear, but the producers like, hey, you got 25, 30 days of sobriety, whatever it was. Like, do you mind relapsing? I was like, no.
What?
Bro. Yeah.
What? You didn't tell me this? What the?
Ooh,
People
that's
are
dark.
fucked.
Yeah.
That's gnarly.
Yeah, for TV components.
Are you fucking serious?
Yeah. I remember my dad's like,
That's
my dad was like,
horrible.
that's when he was just like, he just like, lost
Dad's
his
about
shit.
to drive up.
Yeah.
Ooh, Ashley's like, I'm gonna beat someone's ass.
Still, I mean, I know
Fucking
you're an adult at
producers,
22, but I mean, at that age, I mean, it's still, again, I was literally had the personality of like a 14-year-old kid, you know what I mean? Or the wherewithal of a 14-year-old kid, even though I was 22, just lost all sense of everything. So
that is gnarly.
Yeah.
So you had a good experience besides that. You meet Ashley, you're sober. Is anything going on after that, or are you just sober after that?
I was sober for almost
time,
five years.
years.
Almost 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then did you guys get married within that 5 years?
Yeah, we got married. We had like the perfect cookie cutter Orange County life. We got married. We bought a house. We got a golden retriever.
Yeah. King Lou.
And when did you have your first daughter?
We had not had her until Jason was actually not sober anymore. So do you want to tell the story?
Yeah, well, so we got married 10, 12, 13.
Yeah.
We got that married that date. So I can,
Oh, what's
remember.
our date we got married? Do you remember?
13.
10, 12, 13.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's literally why we did it. I wanted to do 11, 12, 13, but it was
taken, and the weather was kind of funky. We got married in
Malibu.
Malibu.
But no, after having the 5 years of sobriety and, obviously did a ton of work on myself to get to where I was at. And, down the road as life got busy and stuff, I stopped doing the things that I did to get me sober. And my program went off track and other things became more important. I lost sight of God. I lost sight of my routine. I lost sight of my structure. Actually
taking pills.
Yeah, well, I actually went to a psychiatrist and somebody that knows my history. And I said, hey, man, and I was prescribed at like 11, 12 years old with ADD. I was prescribed Adderall at a young age, hated it, never thought anything of it. So I went and saw the psychiatrist with no intent of actually abusing it, honestly, because my life everything was in order.
Really
I had
great.
a really good job, all these things, but I just, again, wasn't doing the things I needed to do, self-care and stuff like that. And so I wanted to, instant gratification, even though looking back, I know all the things I could have done differently, and got prescribed to Adderall. And after 5 years of sobriety, started taking it. Within 3 months, I ended up getting prescription dyslexia. Instead of taking one every 4 hours, I would take, 4 every 1 hour. And
Wow.
And it just became this domino effect where I was up to about 300 to 400 milligrams a day of Adderall.
Adderall makes you, I feel like if I even took a 20 milligram or 10, I would be so irritable. Were you so irritable?
I was fucking taking apart my shredder.
Like
I
literally
was like tweaking. It's pharmaceutical
tweaking
synthetic
hard.
grade.
It's hair. I mean, it's meth.
It's pharmaceutical synthetic grade meth.
This is the reason I
Amphetamines.
wanted to have you guys on, though, is this conversation, because I would like to hear your side of when this, did you start to know that he was kind of like jonesing maybe to do something? Did you feel that?
Good.
Was the energy changing? What was your vibe during all of this?
So first off, I think it down traits too from my family dynamic. My mom's very codependent, and I always was taught take care of your husband. He's kind of the one that's responsible. He's the one in charge, So when I had met Jason and he was he was the breadwinner of the family. He was the one that had everything kind of in order. So I never really thought anything was wrong until I kind of started noticing the alcohol, I remember, in the garage.
So real quick, clarity, Adderall was about 6-7 months where I was just trying to manage that, and I was getting sleep deprived. I was literally hallucinating shit because I would be up for days. I couldn't sleep, so I had to start drinking I literally started drinking to fall asleep.
And I remember the first time we had our garage, and I remember the first time I found that alcohol, and I remember you lied to me, and you were like, no, it's not mine. It's
our neighbors.
Chaz.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chaz.
I did say that. I remember that.
That it was our neighbors from next door, and I was like, okay. Totally aloof.
And was this just hard liquor that you're just swinging out of the bottle?
Whiskey or something. And I just remember my gut, I think, was telling me something was wrong, but I did not want to believe that was my life because I didn't have support. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have any tools. I didn't have any programs. I really didn't have any idea of what to do. I always thought, okay, my husband's sober. He's going to be sober forever. So everything's going to be fine till he's not sober. And then I'm like, shit, well, is he going to be okay? And then I'd ask him. And then that's when the manipulation starts because now, great, Jason's got caught. No, honey, I'm fine. Everything's great. Don't worry about it. And then
did you not notice he was so irritable at all?
Oh, for sure. towards the end,
you started
but you get so good at the lying, conniving, the manipulation where it's oh, it's work. Because I'm dealing with addicts. I'm dealing with all this stuff. People are, the pressures and the other sad part is I'm dying inside but I'm also trying to help save people's lives. Where again, that doesn't make any sense, but I was literally working 90, 100-hour weeks.
You almost believe that lie yourself.
100%.
Oh, for sure.
Right? So it's easy to lie because it's you're convincing yourself.
Ashley, I
Correct.
imagine that you want to do is protect your husband from
100%.
also your friends and family,
Yeah.
making sure that he looks good too.
100%.
So that's such a hard position for you to be in.
Yeah. And you have to remember, Jason's working in the treatment facility. That's what was our income. And so he would say, if you tell anybody about this, I'm not going to have my job. So of course, then I'm like, well, shit, now I'm living with this huge lie. I don't really have anyone to turn to because here's Jason, you know, everyone's looking up to this man. And here we are living with this horrible secret. So it was just like sick. Like I was addicted to his addiction. I would check up on him. I would look for things. I would look through his bags and him and I would fight. The manipulation was crazy. I was a doormat, like everything you could ever imagine of what it's like to live with like an addict or an alcoholic. That's what it is. But then also I'm deteriorating as a person because I'm starting to live this lie that I don't even know what reality is. Like I could not even tell you what my favorite color was, what I like to do, who I was. I had no idea because I was so lost in this like false sense of reality of our life that I almost didn't want to believe it was true. So I kept pretending like it wasn't.
And the scary part though is like, when I used to use way back in the day, it was like, dude, guaranteed to either get in trouble, arrested, something would happen, right? And the scary part is only she knew. I'm working with nobody knows. And so that I was able to, I'm sure now that it all makes sense. I've talked to a lot of people and they're like, yeah, obviously now like we can see how it lined up, but I was able to mask and even manipulate people with that, which was the scariest part now is because now I'm able to hide this, you know, I mean, from all of them, and it just kept getting deeper and deeper. And this is a primary chronic and progressive disease.
And do you start to believe that you have it under control?
Yes, for a while I did, and then
You're like, I'm managing this.
Correct, and then it got to a point where obviously everything that she's saying, I mean, internally, it was basically we were imploding from the inside out, you know, and as opposed to usually it was from the outside in. This was all happening.
Let me ask you one more question because and tell me if this is not your quote because I wonder like and maybe we skipped over this a little bit, but you went to the psychiatrist or therapist and you got Adderall, but it says here relapse begins before someone even picks up a drink. It's a quote attributed to you, but were you in a certain mindset that like you started kind of slipping back to it even before?
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. There's a big difference between being abstinence of drugs and alcohol versus living a life in recovery. Like I'm sure you've heard the term, you know, you're a dry drunk, right? And so that's just the mannerisms and the behaviors. That's what I was saying. So I stopped doing everything that I needed to do to stay sober. Like I have a very structured routine, and structure creates consistency, which creates safety. And that's with kids, right? If they're on routine and stuff, they do very well. As an addict, for me, and for me as my alcoholism, when I have routine and structure, I'm in a much more safe place. I need that structure in my life. And a lot of that stuff went by the wayside. And so again, as I was starting to lie, I was starting to manipulate, I was starting to do things where on a daily basis now, I mean, just like one of the things I do at the end of the day to clean up the wreckage of my past is I actually do a little bit of an inventory, look at where are the things that I did wrong, who do I need to make amends with, and what are the things that I did right, what are the things that I did good. And so it's like, there's a whole process that I have that I'm happy to share that I do on a daily basis.
That's what I was just going to ask you if you could share that with the audience, like just on like a side note of what those things are.
Yeah. So in the morning, look, the first thing I do is when I wake up, I do a morning meditation, I do a prayer. And I actually do a gratitude list of 3 things I'm grateful for, not only what, but why. That's where the meat of everything is. And then I get up and I spend time with my daughter and my son. I mean, I always take that first 30, 40 minutes with them. And it's an important side note is the first 20 minutes of your day will dictate how the rest of your day goes. So whatever you are inputting into your life in that first 20 minutes will really outline how the rest of your day is going to go. So I always put something very positive into my mind. And then I incorporate the gym is a very important thing. I mean, your brain produces more potent chemicals than heroin. You just got to let it work. So exercise is a huge thing for me. I do at least 3 to 4 times a week. And then there's a core group of guys that I meet with, especially during COVID. I used to go to meetings all the time. But there's a core group of people that I get together with, on a multiple times throughout the week. I call them like accountability buddies, people that we can hold accountable. They're more mentors than anything, much older but a safe place to be able to go. And then I'm of service. You know, I kind of live my mantra. My day is do something nice for somebody and don't get caught. And that's kind of how I go about my day, honestly. And I try to be of service as much as I possibly can, which is a big part of my program. And then again, as incorporating God, I have a Bible study that I do with a bunch of guys on Thursday mornings. And then I go to church every Sunday. And so those are kind of the main structural pieces that I have in there. But it's, and then at the end of the night, like one of the biggest things that I started doing now is this daily reprieve though, is doing an inventory and taking ownership and accountability of my day, right? Like, okay, like if we were driving up here and I flicked somebody off, fucking guy couldn't drive, whatever it is, just those little things that you don't think add up. Those are little dominoes that fall. And that's when active addiction can kind of come into place. If I don't take ownership and accountability for the things that I have done, before you know it, it's a week down the road, all these little dominoes that I could have picked back up get too heavy. And now they're just starting to take off. And you understand that analogy I'm explaining?
Yeah. I'm copying you on this inventory. This is amazing.
So it allows me the opportunity, and it gives me an opportunity to be credible for myself and pat myself on the back. It's not always this negative thing. It's like, hey man, like there's amazing things that you did today. You know, there's things that you were like, there's texts that I've gotten in the last few. I mean, that's why I love what I do, is to get texts from people's daughters, from their husbands or wives.
Someone you're helping.
You saved like somebody's a very dear friend of mine whose wife passed away. He, a very, very successful individual, but was really struggling the last couple of years of his life. He was sober the last 2 years of his life before his wife died. I mean, and to have the whole family reach out and to say, like, we can't thank you. Like, and again, that's the motivation and the beauty behind this. And so I know I've kind of, sorry, I rabbit holed all this, but
no, it's interesting.
But that's what that service piece is so big. But that inventory piece for me is like, when I have something bad, I can fix it. You know, there's something I can do immediately. And that way I start my next day, it's completely fresh. I don't have shit from yesterday.
Yeah, so good.
You know, it's funny. I take inventory of my day, but I only think of all the things I did wrong. But you said something in there that I'm going to do. I also need to think of the things I've done right, too.
Correct.
I think that's a mistake to just be like, sometimes I can be hard on myself. Also adding in the things you did right. That's really, really cool. I'm going to copy you on that and be like,
everybody's so hypercritical on themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And everybody needs to give themselves more grace with stuff because we're our biggest, we're so negative. I'm so negative on me that I have to constantly remind myself, like, dude, chill out. Like you've gone through the ringer, you know, and it's nice to be able to be kind to yourself.
I'm going to take inventory that I was 20 minutes late. That's one thing I did wrong today.
We just did a podcast with this guy, Ethan Cross, who wrote a book called Chatter, and a lot of it was like the voices that's in our, or basically what's in our mind. And he said for, study after study just shows like how hard we are. Like we say things to ourselves that you would never say even to your worst enemy, right?
Correct.
Itty bitty shitty committee. That's what we call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ashley, when did you see Jason? He said you were imploding from the inside out. What was the last straw where it was like, you need to go get help? I can't deal with this anymore. It's too big for me. I had a moment like that with my sister, and I literally just, you had to, he said it earlier, you had to surrender.
So there were like a few, because it happened a few times, but when we ended up having to sell our house, Jason, on top of it, had like a really bad gambling addiction that was on top of the drinking and everything else.
And just for the audience to have context, was the gambling addiction before the drugs and alcohol addiction, or is this simultaneously?
It was simultaneous sports bets, sports betting. Yeah, really bad. So we ended up selling our house, and then it was kind of like this thing because I was heartbroken when we had to sell our house because Jason grew up very different than I did. I did not grow up with money. My parents always had like hand-me-down furniture. So this was like a house that we moved into where everything was like restoration hardware custom. You know, I was very attached to my things at the time because I never really had like super nice things. Whereas Jason had grown up on jets and always had really beautiful built houses. You know, his dad was a home builder. So everything, you know, they'd always lived in like fresh homes and everything was great. But so when we had to sell our house, it was very heartbreaking for me. And, you know, Jason always promised, you know, this house has really bad memories for me. So this is also where the manipulation comes into place. If we move, I'll get sober because this house has bad memories now. So if we move, it'll be better. I'll get sober in this house. I don't have any bad memories. So I remember we moved to Corona del Mar. We lived in this like really beautiful house close to the beach. And
can I just really quick ask too, did you know the reason you were moving was because of the gambling addiction, or were you manipulated into thinking it was something else?
No, I knew it was the gambling addiction.
And had you talked about it, or was it something you just knew inside?
There was so much money I couldn't hide it.
It was just, it was just.
And do you tell your friends and family, or do you protect him?
No, I don't say anything.
Yeah, that's what
like literally.
What is this? Is a bookie's gonna come break your legs type situation, or is it?
No, I was always just good about my payments, and I mean, it just got to a point where I ended up stopping, but everything was so backed up now that I was just kind of like, and I was in such a bad place where kind of needed. It was kind of like we had so much equity in the house, so it was kind of like
you just want to clear it.
I just wanted to like clear everything,
and you become addicted to keeping a secret.
Yes. So
that's what I want you to talk, but that's what people need to understand is wherever there's an alcoholic or an addict, there's a codependent, and sometimes they're just as sick, if not sicker.
Yeah.
So now I'm just contributing to the disease because I'm not saying anything. I'm letting everything happen. And I kept thinking like, if I say anything, my life's going to fall apart. But my life was a fucking mess. You know what I mean? So it doesn't matter. I think I had this false sense of reality that if I say something bad's going to happen. But I was already living in disaster, you know? So it didn't matter. But, well, I'll stop and then I'll keep going into our Corona del Mar house. And then when I ended up like putting my foot down. So we actually moved to our house and things were still getting bad and they were getting worse. And I thought, maybe if I have a baby, it'll get better. You know, I kept thinking like, maybe if we have a kid, he'll get sober. I kept thinking
a lot
of
of people think that, I bet too. So this is probably
Yes.
helping a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of variables thinking that, okay, if we bring a kid in the mix, he'll have to get sober because we'll have a kid. We'll be so busy. That didn't happen. And it got to the point where I was so close to having the baby. And I said, there's no fucking way I'm going to have this kid by myself. Like, it had just gotten so bad. That's when you were taking a ton of Adderall. You were drinking like a fifth of vodka, like a day practically. I mean, it was
in front
bad.
of you.
No, I would go to sleep. I was super pregnant. I was exhausted. I would go to sleep in the room
fucked.
and he would be in the office, like up all night drinking by himself. He'd like go down to the liquor store in a hoodie and then come back. And I was like, I remember one day he came in. It's like really sad, but he came in and I was super pregnant and he kind of started crying and he's like, fuck, like you're like really pregnant. Like I don't even barely remember like you being pregnant. Like you're about to have a baby. And I'm like, yep, this is me.
It's really, it's like really hearing you talk about it's really sad.
But it's your addiction, and I think that it helps so many people who are listening that have addiction. I mean, it's a true disease. I mean,
no, it's super cunning, baffling, and powerful. But it also, again, is we've made, you know, we've cleared the wreckage, but it's also it's hard to hear the damage that we do because again, it's such a selfish and self-centered disease where you don't really realize a lot of this is happening because where Ashley's about to go is I was actually on the first floor at Hoag Hospital while she was giving birth to Delilah on the fourth floor.
because
He was in detox when I had Delilah. I had to AWOL him. So I
what does AWOL mean?
like basically AWOL is basically where you take him out without him being cleared. So he hadn't been cleared yet in detox.
I needed it, not AWOL, babe. It's AMA. I had an AMA. Where you leave against medical advice. And so long story short is I was in detox for 48 hours. Ashley's water broke. I got the call, like I was sleeping, you know, all you do when you're coming off of that much Adderall, so you just sleep for days. And so then I got woken up and they're like, your wife's coming into the hospital. She's going to be up at the fourth floor. So I actually was sober. I mean, you know, coming up there for the most part.
But you're just heavily detoxing.
Heavily detoxing off of like tons of Adderall.
And you're like,
drinking.
shut the fuck up. I'm about to squeeze a
Oh,
fucking
you have
baby
no
out of my
idea.
vagina, you little bitch. Michael is complaining about how sleep deprived he was.
Oh, I cannot even. So I call them because I tell them, I'm like, I just want to let you guys know I'm about to have a fucking baby any day now. Like my mom would come into town. Now my mom knows because I told my mom, I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like I'm going to have this baby. Jason needs to go to detox. And I remember calling his parents. His parents were like shocked. Like, what? What do you mean he's in detox? I'm like, well, I'm about to have a baby and he's going to detox and this is what's happening. And I remember calling them and telling them like, I'm in triage. I'm about to have the baby. And they're like, the guy on the phone, can you just let him sleep for a few more hours? I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like get his ass upstairs. I'm about to have a baby right now. He can wake up. Like, oh, can you just let him sleep a little longer? I'm like, no.
So he gets up and comes up.
He gets up, comes up. And I remember we were both really emotional because he was like sober, thank God, for the birth of Delilah. But he was just like exhausted.
That only lasted about 5-6 days. And then because I didn't actively arrest the disease and get stabilized, I went back out for about 6 months.
And that's what's really important too that I want to touch a topic on because of the fact that I did pull him out of detox, he didn't go back to residential. He didn't actually get the support that he needed. So he ended up using again after like a week.
What do you mean you went back out? Like you went back
Meaning
using?
back to using.
Using.
So
Drinking.
how are you using if you just had a baby? Are you in the same household or you just...
Yeah.
I say he didn't go through the process well enough. So he just was basically still in it.
Yeah, so basically I was in detox, went and watched Delilah be born. What I should have done is I should have went back into a program because I didn't actively arrest the disease or get stabilized. Meaning I went back to the house. Had 5-6 days of sobriety, no support system, you know, no therapy, no psychiatry.
Which sounds impossible for anyone.
It really is. And again, part of, she just had the kid and I was able to kind of like just mask it all, you know, and ended up going out for another 6 months until I actually was intervened on by my one of our dear friends, Ashley, my parents, and it was kind of like the biggest relief though, is because even though I went into detox that time, still nobody really knew what was going on. I mean, maybe 5-6 people. And then when I actually went to treatment.
And this was 7 months when Delilah was about 7 months old.
It was not everybody knew. And it was crazy because like it was kind of like God, it's amazing how God works and brings humility to the situation. So there's people that were coming through the hospital doing tours are all people that I used to work with or that worked for me and it was just a very humbling experience. And it was kind of like a big weight that was lifted off my shoulders of like having to live this lie. I mean, I'll never forget. I flew out to Washington D.C. and I got the Voice of Recovery Award from Congress, and I did not have 8 years of sobriety.
Wow.
Yeah, not Congress, but it's from Voices of Recovery. I mean, it was out in Washington D.C. It was again, that's what your disease does. I think I had like 30 days of sobriety at that time.
Do they let you keep that award?
I need to give it back.
We need to give it back. But can you imagine living with that like shame? So on top of it, like he's receiving this award, I'm here knowing that he's lying about everything. So now I'm already resentful.
I'm getting praise for
and you have postpartum.
And you're participant now.
And I had a baby that's colicky that literally cries for 6 months straight. It was hell. And yeah, I remember I got so nervous. So basically you're in like the twilight zone. You know, I hadn't slept in so long. I had no idea what the fuck I was doing with Delilah. I was in a trauma lifestyle anyway. And on top of it, she's crying. And I'm sure that's because I was so stressed throughout my whole pregnancy that when I brought her into this world, she was probably like, put me back. Like, this is not safe. You know, like I'm scared. So, I ended up having her. And then close to 7 months, I remember just Jason, like he was never abusive or anything like that. But I just remember being very nervous because he would pick her up and hold her. And I thought, fuck, this is not good. If he's drunk, he goes in there and picks her up. What if he drops her?
Yeah, they're like fragile at that. The open fontanelle area. I like, oh my God, I can't even talk about that area. It's so delicate. So it's just, it's just scary.
Yeah. And I think that's when I finally, because you know, you're like 6 months in, so you're like a little more alert of the situation and you're like, all right, this is not going to happen anymore. Like this.
Yeah, but you also were like putting your head on my chest to make sure I was still breathing.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
it was bad.
There was so much trauma. Like, I mean, because the amount that I'm just lucky I didn't die from the usage, you know what I mean? Just from heart attacks or whatever. But I remember just waking up in her head, I'd be like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm just making sure you're alive.
Yeah.
You mentioned suicide. Is this before or after?
Well, so the actual attempts were before Ashley. But the suicidal ideations, they came like, I mean, when I use, like, it's not, I'm in a horrible place.
Can you explain that to anyone that doesn't understand what that means?
Suicidal ideations. It's just basically the thought processes of wanting to kill yourself and kind of like planning out what that would look like, just being suicidal.
So you like actually like think of like ways that you would do it,
and
the drugs enhance that.
Yes. And so again, is when I use, this is the way I explain my use, right? So at first drinking and using was fun. It became a lifestyle and then it became a way of survival. So when I actually go and use again, like if I'm using, it's not like, hey, Mike, let's go have a beer and let's go watch the races or let's go do like, maybe that would work for a week or two. But I mean, like when I'm out and I'm drinking, like I'm the type of person that will drink like a fifth before I go out with you and be like, all right, bro, let's have a couple beers. Even though I'm already like, there's no fun left in it. Like,
yeah, you're like, it's pretty blacked out before you even.
Correct. I gotta be I'm in a miserable state of existence if I'm using or drinking. Like I'm at that. I look at it, if you like compared it to, again, cancer's its own thing, but if like alcoholism was looked at as a cancer, like I'm a stage 4 alcoholic. Like if I'm drinking, it's because I'm trying to escape and I'm trying to get as far away as I can.
So after 7 months, you got sober?
You went to treatment?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had an intervention on you.
Yes.
I'll never forget. We had to like buy you booze just to get you to go.
Can I ask you something about treatment? Because it's like, you know,
I have that video.
There's a lot of, I think especially Orange County. I mean, this area that we've all grown up in, Orange County, San Diego, LA, there's what I would call like the fancy rehabs, like the kind of like, eventually, I think when your sister got sober, like it was not fancy anymore. Like this was a place that you don't want to be, right? It's like you couldn't put this place on television,
right?
Of all the places you went, was there a certain type of facility that ended up helping the most, or was
that's
it like?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's good.
No, you bring up a really good question, and I think, look,
not to diminish any of the ones that are like high end, but I think some of them it's like you're going to having sushi and like you're like it's like when Lauren's sister got sober, like it was
right.
Yeah. There was no glamour when Faye finally got sober. Like it was not a glamorous place.
No, you bring up a phenomenal point, and that's been the struggle and the trial in our own industry. Is look, treatment does work and recovery is possible. But unfortunately, for me personally, there's out of the, let's call it 15,500 facilities, I'd refer to about 10 to 15% because there's about the other 80%. There's probably a good chunk there's 20% that are bad, that don't have the right practices, the right policies, procedures, the right doctors, the right psychiatrists. I mean, it's run and operated bad. And then there's others that they cut corners, they do different things. And again, that's just my experience, right? Is take it or leave it. I've been I've worked in the space for a long time. I've seen a lot of facilities, and there are great programs out there. And it's so individualized. It's not like one program's, this one plush place is going to be better for her sister than this one non-plush, more, indigenous type of facility that's run by the county. I mean, it's different strokes, different folks. And it honestly, it really comes down to the assessment. I think it's very clinically incentivized, and we've learned that. So when somebody actually goes into treatment, it's so important that they're properly diagnosed, right? And I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things is so many people are misdiagnosed when they go into treatment, is because, when they do these biopsychosocials and get a full assessment of an individual, oftentimes you're getting somebody being schizophrenic, you're getting somebody that's showing signs of bipolar or sleep deprivation, and you're misdiagnosing them when they're not even properly stabilized. So they're actually not getting the best type of care. And so I think, again, it's so important in the beginning stages that it's when you look for facilities, again, it is important to look at the medical director, look at the doctor, look at his credentials. Look, is he an ASAM certified doctor, addiction specialty in medicine? The psychiatrist, what is their background? What is their history? How long have they been in this? And that's like one of the things is looking at all the staff, look at how long they've been in the space, look at the turnover rate. Like actually, when you go to a place, I highly recommend that you tour it. And when you are in there, you are actually able to, when you sign in because you're signing away the HIPAA compliancy thing, when you're doing a tour, pull a client aside and say, hey, how's this program? Do you like it? Is it going well? Like, do
your research.
It's just like if you had cancer, you're not just going to go, I'm going to go check out this place on the corner. Or, I'm going to go to Dr. Google and go to the highest paid Google search. It's like, do the due diligence, do the research around it, and go in there. But it's like, for me, any place that like I send a family member, a loved one, friends and stuff like that is I do the due diligence, and I see, feel, touch it. And I go over there and I see how many times is a doctor running the case, or is he handing it off to a nurse practitioner? Like, there's so much information that you can really get. And it's a multifaceted disease. It is very complex, and it's so important to get versed on it. So people that are struggling with people that have addiction, like in this case with Ashley, like my biggest advice for people in Ashley's shoes is to get educated.
Yeah. 100%.
Well, that's why I asked, because
you need to have a resource podcast. That was really like, there's even that like bit of information. I feel like you should have a resource podcast for people who are struggling to go to.
Listen, the reason I asked the question and I'm basing it being ignorant to those type of facilities and places, but I try to consider myself somebody that does research and is educated. But even someone like me who's looking and is curious, like I still don't know, right? So I think there's many people that just have no fucking clue. Because it's not talked about, right?
But I think if I was using, like me myself, and I wasn't ready to get sober, and I'm just being really self-aware, I would want to go to these bougie places because it's like, oh, while I quote unquote get sober, I can get all of these different things. So do you think that sometimes people are going to these bougie recovery rehabs to just, I put it in quotes, get sober, but not really get sober?
I'm sure. I mean, yeah, there's people that go to treatment and they're not in a place. I mean, again, you're talking to a guy that went to 13 or 14 different places, right? And there's many times, I went to treatment in Hawaii. I surfed all the time. Like there's times where, and again, the treatment was fine, but it was also, my motive wasn't to get sober, and everybody is in a different point. And, so I think when people are going to treatment, I think there's people that are really going there and they're accustomed to a different type of lifestyle and they want those types of amenities, whether it's a C-level executive, entertainer, whatever it may be. There's just a lifestyle that goes towards that and for a comfortability. And there's other people that obviously want to take advantage of that situation. But for me, I went to treatment. I mean, I went to some nice places and I went to some very non places.
Can you say a name of the best place that you would recommend if someone's struggling, or are you not allowed to say names?
I'm more than happy to do that, but it's so individualized. It's because like if somebody, what Mike's going through, it was completely different when Ashley might be going through.
Okay.
Because
it's different. Yeah.
There's not one. That's the biggest thing is there's not a cookie cutter program, right? There's a really good primary eating disorder. There's a really good adolescent program. There's a really good,
dual
mental
diagnosis
health.
programs that people don't realize.
Maybe a more like tangible or practical question is like, if you were going to start doing the research and trying, like, say you're somebody that has a loved one that you want to get help for, where would you start? Like, just
we actually started a nonprofit coming up on 2 years, and we gave away almost $1 million in scholarships this last year.
Wow. For treatment.
But one of our things is creating the most safe and trusted environment for people that are struggling with mental health and or addiction. So you can come to us and we can help you go through, navigate the situation that you're in to best point you in the right direction. We're not affiliated with any facilities, anything like that. but we actually have clinicians and case managers that will help direct you to the place that it could be the most appropriate, help you get educated, help you get versed on that. Because again, I want to point this out there. Like I always say, Dr. Google, because people will go there and they go to these glorified business cards, being these websites that get, it's highest SEOs.
And listen, I want to say,
good.
I used to have an agency, and I don't know if I've ever talked about this, but we got approached by a lot of facilities, like treatment facilities,
Correct.
trying to get us to run traffic or to run SEO to like rank them. And I always felt strange. Like we never actually ended up doing it because it felt strange to kind of use marketing practices to rank facilities, if that makes sense. But I think to your point,
that's my point.
A lot of people just go on Google and they see these things that populate because they're maybe doing marketing practices.
So my advice would be is talk to people. Everybody knows somebody that's gone through addiction. I mean, and if you haven't, again, is ask a doctor, or ask friends, ask your church group, ask some type of it's like a degree of separation to find somebody that's gone to treatment.
Plug into a meeting,
but it's asking people that have had success with that and sharing your story for relatability and connectivity. And then, looking them up and going there. And then again, going over everything that we went over, looking at the turnover rate, looking at the credentials, looking at the doctor, looking how long they've been around, looking at what they treat, and ask the questions, how are you going to best serve, or, will you treat somebody with my conditions, and go in there and have the conversation with them. And again, I wish it was just as simple, and that's what we're hoping to make Red Songbird Foundation for everybody that struggles with addiction.
What's the Instagram if someone wants to go check it out?
Red Songbird Foundation.
Perfect.
Yeah. So go there. And again, as we have scholarship applications every month. So if people don't have the means to get the help that they need, we are here to provide that. And
the other piece of that is for someone who feels that they've been an enabler or wants Al-Anon or something like that. Is there somewhere that you went after he went and got sober, after those 7 months that you had been postpartum?
So I went to the family program, which is basically just a few meetings at his treatment facility. And that was where I started plugging back into Al-Anon. But I will say, which is so interesting, and this is probably what a lot of people do, but I actually was going to Al-Anon when he was using, and I was lying in Al-Anon. So I went there still pretending like my husband was sober, living this wonderful life, which is the worst thing ever. That's when I was even the sickest. So that's what I'm saying. That's why we're saying it's two sides of a coin, because Jason's over here telling his story, pretending like everything's fine. I'm here in meetings now lying about the fact that my he's sober, blah, 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 and not really telling my true story. So I'm not getting any help. I'm just super sick, just as sick as he is. When he finally went into treatment and I finally went to one of my first Al-Anon meetings, I went to an all women's meeting, and I remember standing up and telling my story as if I had been to a meeting for the first time ever. And it was like freaking the heavens were parting. I just remember this huge weight lifted off my shoulder and all these women coming up to me afterwards and being like, we're here for you. We'll give you all this list of numbers, just having a full support system. And it was the first time in my life where I felt like the shame started to being lifted off me. You know what I mean? I started to feel less shameful.
There really needs to be a program though for the shit that she went through. There's no reason that I should have got different treatment than she did.
There's no way. I should be able to go to a facility and get so much fucking treatment because he's over there getting treatment and help. And here I am living with regret, trauma, all this
new baby. I mean, there's so much.
You know what I mean?
There
all
really
this
needs
stuff.
to be, because there is places out there that help, with a week long or a 2 week long intensive. But there really needs to be something for the families.
Yeah.
And we've
started.
Yeah.
A him and her facility.
I mean, honestly, it would be incredible. Just having a loved one to be able to go and just get. It's mostly the resentment.
Could I use it if Michael annoyed the fuck out of me? I could just go for a week just to take a break from him.
The resentment facility.
The resentment foundation.
Yeah.
Come release your resentments.
So once you get sober, I have to ask you, what made you decide, and we talked about this a little off air, to do the Hills again?
Well, it was originally the whole thought process of going back on. So again, is just for timeline of everything, is relapse, or I go to treatment or go to detox. Delilah's born, relapse, get about 7-8 months, make the decision to go on the Hills for the first time. And that was because, again, as I feel like God was giving us an opportunity. For me, it was almost kind of like, hey, this could be a cool opportunity to show what recovery looks like again. And because again, as I don't discredit everything I learned over those last 10 years, right?
But a lot of this was documented through all the different television appearances.
Yeah, well, from 2010 to Delilah being born, I wasn't on TV anymore.
No.
So there was a gap between that. But again, as I don't take away anything that I'd gone through, it's like, you know, those fall downs were just added experiences for me. And I thought it'd be a great opportunity to have my story and Ashley's story to be able to be like, hey, look, here's the alcoholic side of it. Here's the codependent side of it. And we can share and we can kind of navigate and have this opportunity. And that's really why we did it, because honestly, at the beginning, I was like, I don't really know that we want to do it. And so once we actually made that decision to do it, again, I was not in the right frame of mind.
You were newly sober.
Newly sober. And I had a lot of my own insecurities that I was dealing with, just with the way I looked, with weight. And I mean, by this time, I got so bloated. I was like 220 pounds and just in the worst shape physically, just mentally. And it probably wasn't, to your point, it probably wasn't. I think there was more of like an ego thing of like, this will be really good for you guys to be able to go do, and with the right intentions, honestly. And we should go do it. But internally, after looking, it was like, you know, I had a lot more work I needed to do. And again, thank God the relapse, because of the time that I'd had, the support system that I'd had set up, it lasted a day. And I was able to hop right back on. But it was also an opportunity to be able to walk through that and to give people some relatability and some connectivity that, like, we are all human and stuff does happen. Again, as I don't think relapse is a part of recovery. I think it's actually a lack thereof. And there's a lot of things that I could have done differently to prevent that. But again, as I was not in a place to talk or open up or share those types of things. And the more I'm doing, like the more I've you know, after just having celebrated 2 years of sobriety on December 17th,
Congratulations.
I can just see that I'm just like, it's cool to hear when I came in, you're just like, hey, you seem like you're just calm, more patient. And it's just like, I've just really changed the way I look at life and the way I communicate.
I will
say,
since a fan of the show from the beginning, you have a lot of charisma. You seem very secure. You seem very chill. So do you.
Thank you.
And I think that you almost had to maybe go through all this to get to the other side.
I mean, this as a real compliment. Like, 'cause we get a lot of people that come in here, and some of them are great, and some of them are a bunch of. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
We do this a lot, and like both of you, like you have an immediate charisma and likability. I mean, that's a compliment, and you have an interesting story, both of you. And I think it would probably, it's a shame if that light is dimmed, right, with all these other things, because this is clearly working much better.
Yeah, 100%.
What is it like being on the Hills with 27 different personalities and demands and all these different things with everything that you guys are already dealing with? How is that? That's a lot of personalities.
I was just
exhausting. Then be pregnant.
Yeah, I don't know. Fuck. I was like, oh my gosh.
I mean, literally, they kind of pictured me to be a little bit more of a square than I was, though, because I was having a lot of fun. It's just they kind of made me like.
You didn't seem like a square. You seemed like you're pregnant. It's a lot.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
What are you supposed to be doing? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. It's like, it was a lot. This last
when I was pregnant,
really
I went to bed at 7:00. So, I mean.
Well, and you're filming till like 11 o'clock. I remember some nights I'm like, I got to go to fucking bed.
Oh, they would get my worst side.
Tired.
Yeah,
and then you have people screaming in your ear, not wearing fucking pants. You're like
drinking tequila.
Dude,
it's like a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
And Ashley, I mean, I will say, I think she got kind of a shitty edit on some of the stuff because Ashley's very outgoing, very fun. She's like, you know, they kind of would make her look like this, like even in those scenes where they just totally would cut it to make it look like she was like just overly annoyed when it's like that was like way later down the night, you know what I mean? And how
my fucking grandma French twist and Heidi's like screaming in the back and I'm thinking, really? Like, you guys, come on. I actually was having fun.
I think the audience is savvy enough to know though that there's edits. Like I immediately liked you.
Oh,
I mean, I
like you too.
I didn't like that edit. I don't know.
I know, but you know, I mean, we understand the business. I mean, we all live here. You think about people that are in Wisconsin and they're sitting there like commenting on your thing, like, you're such a fucking square.
Is it weird
like, blah,
when
blah,
the
blah.
show goes live when people go to your Instagram and start giving their opinions about stuff they don't know about?
Yeah,
it's kind of funny. Yeah.
No, I might. Yeah, for you.
I mean, well, the first season was really hard. I mean, Jason was like, Ashley, like, you got to stop. It's really ridiculous. Because I was obsessing over it.
I tried preparing. I was just like,
because you've been through the rodeo.
Yeah, but I mean, because you have to remember, I started this in 2005.
Yeah, so you don't give a fuck what anyone says.
I could give two shit. And I'm sitting there like, because she was getting, like, it literally got to a point, and that's where like the code and like that whole codependent type of thing came, like untreated codependency, not just for me, but for herself, right? Because now people are saying stuff. So it's really affecting her.
Yeah.
And so that became a whole nother thing where again, it's outside my wheelhouse, but I mean, I was trying to give as best insight and best direction as I could with this, because I'm like, you gotta just fucking step back.
Yeah.
Like, people have the time to say this shit. Like, hey, you're taking up rent in their head. Like, you're not thinking about them.
I've realized that, though, whenever I give advice on that, it's one of those things that you have to just go through to get to the other side.
Yeah.
Like, now someone could say anything to me. They've said it all.
Same.
And I'm just like, Like,
Yeah,
you know,
same.
but when you first happens to you, you're like, oh my God. And I can't even imagine being on a television show. I'm not on a television show, but like, you almost have to, like, she almost had to probably go through feeling like upset and like jumbled, and then to get to the other side of not giving a fuck.
Yeah. I feel a lot better now. I think the biggest thing too is once that first season happened, it was like, okay, then the second season I felt a lot more comfortable. But now I'm pregnant, so I'm just like hormonal and irritable. And then people are saying shit about Jason. And that's when I was like, oh, no. Yeah, like Mama Bear came out for sure.
So where are you guys at with the show not being renewed? I'm so sad. What are you guys doing and working on and putting your energy towards now?
Well, I launched a hair accessory line.
I know. I want to hear all about that. Your hair looks beautiful.
Thank you. In September. And so I'm actually working on my second collection. So that I'm hoping will come out this year. And we're maybe going to do a podcast. So I'm vlogging right now our whole entire journey.
I see it for you guys.
Moving across country. So that's going to be really exciting. We're just ready to have some land and slow down and just enjoy our kids. You know, I kind of feel like, as much as it's sad that we're not going to be able to be on the Hills anymore, we're still very good friends with a lot of cast members, so I know we'll be in touch. But I think the biggest thing is that I feel really happy with the way things ended and like the conclusion of the show, because now we're on to, you know, focusing more on our kids, and that's really what we want.
No, I think everything happens for a reason. You know, again, it was a great opportunity to be back, and cool if it happened. If it didn't, you know, it wasn't like what dictated us. We didn't go on the show as this was our career. We already had paths and stuff prior to going back on the show. And for me, is obviously I want to carry out and continue helping build and grow this foundation. You know, I've been on the board for the Los Angeles Mission for many years, and always been just very philanthropic and wanted to give back. And I serve with Nancy Davis on Cure Addiction now as well. And so really doing a lot more work in the research and working with a lot of doctors in different areas of addiction, and actually doing studies and white papers and stuff on that. And like I said, supporting the foundation, and then doing a lot of advocacy work. You know, I do a lot of speaking and stuff around addiction and mental health, and putting together, you know, some panels actually.
We just started doing speaking together where we talk to some companies about addiction and codependency, which has been
with
really, really cool.
And talk to companies and stuff. We're actually doing one with Terry Bradshaw's daughter on the Sunday.
Cool.
It's coming up. Her brother had an overdose, so we're going to go out and do some awareness around that. Brandy Ledford, myself, Hillary, some of our board members and stuff. So do a lot of speaking engagements. But for me too, is like with this move, it's like being born and raised in you know, California, specifically Orange County and Laguna. It's a challenge. You know, this is all I know down here, but I'm also really excited to Ashley's point, to have a change of pace, and to really embrace this time with my kids. It's not like I'm going to go retire right now, but why my kids want to be with me and want to hang out with me, and I can have the most influence on them, you know, in 12 years when they don't want to, like, you know, I can work back up and stuff like that. So I'm also doing real estate investment stuff, and we have some fun projects that we're working on that are again in the real estate side of things. So I think it's really right now we're excited about kind of having a little bit less on our plate, and kind of really just seeing how this goes, but really embracing the time with the kids and with one another. It's an opportunity for us to grow even further.
You know, we moved from LA to Austin, and I will say we came here this week, obviously, to do a bunch of podcasts and stuff. And I looked at Michael last night, and I just said, I can't wait to get home. And it's nothing against LA. It's that Austin for us is so grounding. And that's the word I've realized. Like, it's just, it's not even that it's like slower. It's just more nature and like just more focused on things I actually want to put my energy towards.
But listen, I think at some point, if you're curious about a big city and you haven't been in one, like it is an interesting and maybe positive experience to come and, you know, live in a big city. It doesn't have to be LA, it could be New York, it could be any big city, Chicago, whatever. But I just don't feel it's a natural way to live. Right. And my entire life, I felt like I've been called to a place outside of a place like this. And I just like, you know, it was kind of like in a weird way, like when we came here, it's like, yeah, we're here, like it's briefcase mentality. Like we're working, we're not really going out, but we're always find ourselves wanting to leave.
Right.
I'm like, that's weird that we want to leave the place we live so often. And I just think like it's a lot of it's because it's so artificial, right? This is not how humans evolved to be in these like massive structures with all this shit everywhere.
Our point is you guys, I think, are gonna love it. I'm so excited to watch your next journey. I wouldn't be mad if you did a Tennessee reality show with Justin and Kristen.
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? I would love to see that. I also wouldn't be mad at a podcast. You guys both are very good on the mic. Where can everyone find your hair collab, your Instagram, Jason's Instagram? You shared your foundation's Instagram, but maybe one more time just for the audience.
So my hair collection is the Ashley Waller Gold Collection. It's at basicextra.com/Ashley Waller. You can also see it on my Instagram at Ashley Waller. And then you can click my link there and you can see our whole journey about our lives and everything we've been going through moving across the country.
Going.
That's it.
No, you're good. Keep going.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to find out more about myself, just go to Jason Wahler on Instagram, or you can go to jasonwahler.com. And the foundation is Red Songbird Foundation. So if you or a loved one is struggling, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we're happy to provide some insight and direction.
And honestly, if you guys have any more questions, seriously, DM us. We go through them all the time. We have so many people that reach out to us, that talk to us about their struggles, their family struggles, and we try to reach out to them as much as possible. So,
Jason, Ashley, come back anytime. I could have gone even longer. There was so many questions we had. We normally don't even go that long. You guys were so good on the mic. We normally go like 45 minutes to an hour.
Get the fuck out of here.
Thank you guys both for coming on.
Thank you both for
Congratulations
sharing the story.
on 2 years.
I think the story's going to help a lot of people, honestly.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
That was creme de la creme.